I don't consider myself the jealous type. Never have. I've always believed that when you commit to someone, you owe them your trust until they give you a reason not to. But something about that night, something I couldn't quite name, felt off from the moment Leslie walked through the door. She had just gotten back from a weekend trip to Seattle, a girls' getaway, with her cousin Melanie. That's what she told me. Anyway, the idea had popped up out of nowhere. She said Melanie was going through a rough patch after a bad breakup and needed to get out of town for a few days. Leslie offered to go with her. Just a change of scenery, she'd said casually while tossing clothes into a weekender bag. Nothing wild. We'll probably spend more time in the hotel than anywhere else. I didn't question it. Not at first. Leslie was always the planner between the two of us. She'd map out restaurant reservations a week ahead of time and color-code our grocery list for God's sake. So when she said it was spontaneous, I chalked it up to her trying to be supportive. Everyone needs a break now and then. And if I'm being honest, I didn't mind the alone time. Gave me a chance to catch up on some work and clear my head. When she got back that Sunday night, everything seemed normal, at least on the surface. She came in carrying a latte from some Seattle coffee shop, wearing her favorite navy blue dress with the gold buttons at the collar. The same one she told me she wore to dinner with Melanie. Her smile was a little forced, like she was trying too hard to act casual. I noticed it but didn't say anything. We hugged, kissed, and talked about the flight. She said they mostly stayed around the hotel, went to the spa, and had a couple nice meals. She even brought back a souvenir mug with a cartoon Space Needle on it. Something didn't feel right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. It wasn't until the next morning that the red flag revealed itself. She was in the shower when her smartwatch, which she'd left on the kitchen counter, buzzed twice. I wasn't trying to snoop. I was making coffee, half asleep, still shaking off the Monday morning fog when I glanced down and saw it. Cam alert. Motion detected, elevator 3B. View clip. Cam alert? I didn't even know she had a camera app installed. She was always more of a paper calendar type, and anytime I mentioned smart home stuff, she called it tech-over****. Still, the name made me curious. I tapped the notification. The screen loaded for a second, and then a short clip appeared. 5 seconds, maybe less. An elevator door opened. A woman walked in with a man. At first, I didn't recognize her, something about the angle, the lighting. But then she laughed and turned her face toward him. Leslie. My stomach dropped. She was standing close to him, her hand brushing his arm. And then, just as the elevator doors started to close, he leaned in, and she kissed him. Not a peck. Not something you could brush off as friendly or platonic. This was slow, familiar. Mate. Her head tilted slightly like she'd done it before. His hand rested lightly on her lower back, and she smiled as if they were the only two people in the world. And the dress, the navy blue one, the same one she said she wore to dinner with Melanie. The clip ended there. Just like that, my world shifted. My hands shook as I set the phone down on the counter, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. For a few minutes, I just stood there in silence, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with a rising nausea in my stomach. I replayed the clip again, and again. There was no mistaking it. When she came out of the shower, I was sitting at the kitchen table. The smartwatch lay beside my phone. I looked up as she walked in, towel wrapped around her hair, humming something under her breath like she didn't have a care in the world. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She glanced at me, then at the table. "Everything okay? Got a weird alert on your watch. From a camera app? You didn't tell me you had one." There was a split second, a micro-expression, that flickered across her face before she masked it. Surprise, maybe panic. But then it was gone, replaced with something cooler. "Oh, it's from the hotel," she said smoothly. "They have cameras in the elevators and send security alerts. It's a thing they do now. Weird, right?" She walked past me to grab a mug, not even making eye contact. I waited. "I tapped on it," I said. "There's footage of you in the elevator." She stopped pouring the coffee. "Looked like you were kissing someone." Silence. She turned slowly, mug in hand, and looked at me like I'd accused her of arson. Then, In a tone that was disturbingly calm, she said, "Are you seriously going through my watch now? Wow, Austin. That's a new low." I stared at her. "That's what you want to talk about? The watch. You're invading my privacy. Do you realize how messed up that is? You were kissing someone, and you're making wild assumptions based on a blurry 5-second clip. Maybe you should ask yourself why you're so eager to believe the worst in me." There it was, the twist. She was good. Too good. Instead of denial or panic, she went on the offensive. Her voice didn't rise. Her hands didn't shake. She acted like I had crossed a line. I should have known then that anyone who could lie that smoothly had done it before. I tried again. "The dress you were wearing. You said it was for dinner with Melanie." She shrugged. So you wore it while kissing someone else in a hotel elevator." She blinked, slow and deliberate. "That's your interpretation. I'm done with this conversation." She walked away, leaving her coffee untouched on the counter. Just like that. And I let her go. Not physically, I didn't chase her or yell. But mentally, I let her get away with it. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to piece together what had just happened. Somehow, I'd gone from holding hard evidence of betrayal to feeling like I was the one at fault. She'd flipped the whole situation upside down. I replayed her words in my head. "Maybe you should ask yourself why you're so eager to believe the worst in me." It gnawed at me. Was I? Or had she just become that SK*led at lying? The rest of the day passed in a blur. I went to work, but I couldn't focus. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the elevator doors closing. I saw her smiling. By the time I got home, she was acting like nothing had happened. She asked me if I wanted Thai for dinner. Thai. Like we didn't have a conversation that morning that should have ended everything. I nodded. Said yeah. And I hated myself for it. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her soft breathing next to me felt like static in my ears. I kept thinking about the clip. The man. The dress. Her voice. It was the first red flag. I just didn't realize how many more were coming. After that morning, I started seeing things differently, not just in the present, but in the past. It was like someone had flipped a switch in my brain, and every memory I had of Leslie suddenly came with a magnifying glass. The easy smiles, the half-explained nights out, the little inconsistencies I used to wave off as quirks, they all started to stack up. That night, I lay in bed wide awake, listening to the rhythmic sound of her breathing beside me. Her back was turned, her body curled into a shape that once looked peaceful. Now it looked distant. Like a stranger had slipped into my home and taken her place. She shifted slightly in her sleep, mumbling something I couldn't make out, and I just watched her. I studied the outline of her face in the moonlight. I used to find comfort in those quiet moments. Now, I felt like I was trapped beside someone I didn't fully know. I didn't sleep. Instead, I started thinking back. It had been gradual, whatever had changed. I couldn't put a finger on when things started going sideways, but the signs had been there. The more I thought about it, the more obvious they became. The first thing I remembered was the phone. A few months ago, Leslie had started turning her screen away whenever I entered the room. At first, I thought nothing of it. Maybe she was texting her sister about something personal. Maybe it was a work thing. She said she was planning a surprise for my birthday. That seemed innocent enough. But then it didn't stop. Even after my birthday passed, the phone was always locked, always face down. She used to leave it on the nightstand while we watched Netflix. Now she kept it in her lap or tucked under a blanket. One night, we were having dinner, pasta she'd picked up from our favorite Italian place. Her phone lit up with a message, and when she saw it, she went pale for a second before forcing a smile and flipping it over. "Everything okay?" I'd asked. "Yeah. Just a work thing. I'll deal with it later." She didn't touch her food after that. And the calendar. We used to share everything: grocery lists, appointments, dinner plans. But a while back, she stopped using the shared app. I'd open it and see empty days while she'd come home talking about how busy she was. I asked her once if something was wrong with the sink, and she laughed it off. "Oh, I've just been scribbling things in my paper planner." Old habits die hard. She never used to carry a paper planner. Then there were the new friends. Unnamed, faceless, and always you don't know them. When we were first married, I knew every friend she had. We went to barbecues together, celebrated birthdays. But over the past 6 months, these new friends started popping up, names I'd never heard, coworkers she didn't see often, or friends from yoga who don't do social media. Every time I offered to join her, she gently turned me down. "It's just a girl thing. It'll be boring. You don't want to sit through that. It's a work thing, and it's mostly people venting about clients." It felt like I was being pushed to the outside of my own relationship, slowly, methodically. Even her tone changed. There was a sharpness to her voice that hadn't been there before. A new kind of irritation when I asked normal questions like I was walking on eggshells I didn't even know were there. She'd go from warm to cold in the span of a minute. Mornings that used to start with a sleepy good morning became her brushing past me in the hallway with her phone already to her ear. Nights ended with her saying she was tired and disappearing into the bedroom, door half closed, scrolling endlessly. I began to wonder when she started emotionally checking out. It wasn't the elevator kiss that began the unraveling. That was just when the blindfold came off. I remembered something she said last month when we were talking about the baby. Or rather, when I brought it up and she nodded vaguely. I had asked her if she'd taken another test since the last one came back inconclusive. She shrugged, saying, "What's the rush?" and then pivoted the conversation to her work deadline. But that was the thing. Leslie used to be the one who brought it up first. She used to smile when talking about names, about what the nursery might look like. But recently there was a hollowness to her when the subject came up. No excitement. No fear. Just indifference. That word haunted me, indifference. Not anger, not resentment. Just apathy. That's what scared me the most. I started taking mental notes. I told myself I wasn't being paranoid, I was collecting data. Every late arrival, every vague answer, every change in routine. I wasn't snooping. I was trying to survive. She said she was going to yoga on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but she always came back with perfect makeup and hair that didn't look like it had seen a sweat. I checked the class times on the studio's website. They didn't match when she claimed she was there. I even drove past the place once during a session and didn't see her car. One Thursday evening, she came home almost 2 hours later than usual, smelling like a cologne I didn't wear. I said nothing. Just noted the time and the smell and the fact that she immediately went to shower before even saying hello. I started noticing how quiet our house had become. No more spontaneous hugs in the hallway. No more reaching for my hand under the table. She used to lean into me on the couch like gravity pulled her there. Now she sat on the far end, curled up with her phone. She'd beg *and sleeping with her back to me every night. Sometimes she'd mumble, "Love you," as if she had to, like brushing teeth or locking the door before bed. It used to be warm. Real. Now it felt like a formality. One night, I watched her fall asleep while the TV flickered in the background. Her hand clutched her phone, her body curled into a tight little shape like she was trying to protect herself. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to shake her awake and ask, "Who are you now?" But I stayed silent. Because part of me was scared of the answer. I kept thinking about the elevator footage. Not just the kiss, but how happy she looked. That laughter, the carefree, confident kind, was something I hadn't seen in months. It made me wonder if she had been mourning us this whole time in private while I still believed we were okay. That clip wasn't a mistake. It was a window. A crack in the wall she had built between us. It didn't take long before I started checking her online accounts. She had never unsynced the cloud drive we used to back up our phones. I'd forgotten about it too until that night I couldn't sleep and remembered. My fingers moved before my brain caught up. I logged into the account and clicked on her folder. And there, among the old vacation pics and holiday parties, was a subfolder labeled Weekend. The timestamp matched the exact weekend she'd been in Seattle. I hovered over the folder. My heart felt like it was trying to punch through my chest. I hadn't opened it yet. Not yet. I needed to know the truth. But I also knew that the moment I opened that folder, everything would change. No more denial. No more, maybe it was innocent. The truth would be laid bare. So I closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow, I'd open it. But deep down, I already knew what I'd find. I didn't sleep at all that night. The air in the room felt different. Heavier. Like the walls themselves had leaned in, waiting for me to do something, say something, react. But I didn't. I just lay there, wide-eyed, beside a woman who, for all intents and purposes, wasn't really mine anymore. By the time the first light started to filter through the blinds, I'd made my decision. I got out of bed quietly, careful not to wake her. She was curled away from me as usual, her arm tucked under her pillow, her phone within reach. Even in sleep, she kept it close. I stared at it for a moment, half tempted to just grab it and go through it right there. But I didn't need it, not anymore. I had something better. The cloud. I walked into the guest room and closed the door behind me. My laptop was on the desk, the same place it had been for years. I opened it, logged in, and went straight to the cloud drive we used to back up our devices. Back when trust wasn't a question between us. She had never removed my access. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she thought I had. Either way, it was still there. Her folder. Labeled simply L. sitting quietly in the corner of the screen. I clicked it open. First, it was all routine. Photos from vacations, birthday dinners, selfies with friends. But then I saw it again, weekend. The same folder I'd hovered over the night before. It had a timestamp from 3 weeks ago. Seattle. The trip she took with Melanie. My heart thudded as I double-clicked. The screen blinked, and the contents loaded. Photos. Dozens of them. Some clearly taken in a hotel room. I clicked through slowly, my stomach turning with every image. In one, she was holding a glass of wine, perched on the edge of a hotel bed in lacy black lingerie. Lingerie I'd never seen before. In another, she was laughing at something off camera. Her head tilted back, eyes closed, like she didn't have a care in the world. Then the videos. There were 3. I clicked the first one, and it took a moment to load. The screen came to life with a shaky handheld clip, probably from her phone. She was in the same hotel room, sitting on a couch, curled up beside someone. I couldn't see his face clearly, just the outline of his arm draped around her shoulders. They were talking softly, laughing. At one point, she leaned over and kissed his cheek. He pulled her in, and they disappeared out of the frame, giggling like teenagers. I paused it. My hands were shaking. This was real. This was happening. I clicked the second video. This time, they were in bed, under the covers, the camera angled from a bedside table. She looked directly at it at one point, laughing as she took a sip of wine. "Turn it off," she whispered, still giggling. "You're gonna get me in trouble." He didn't. Neither did she. I didn't watch the third. Couldn't. My entire body went numb. Not the kind of numb that comes from cold, but the kind that comes from shock. Like my brain had disconnected from my body, trying to spare me from what I was feeling. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, the paused frame frozen mid-laugh. Her face looked different. Not physically, emotionally. She looked alive, present, like she hadn't been in months. And that realization hurt more than anything. She wasn't just cheating. She was happy doing it. I backed out of the folder and shut the laptop. My mind was racing, but my body felt still. I expected rage or maybe heartbreak. But what I felt was clarity. The kind of clarity that only comes after you've been living in fog for too long. Leslie was cheating. She'd planned it. She'd lied about it. And worst of all, she didn't seem the least bit conflicted about any of it. She didn't just break our marriage. She walked out of it while keeping the door propped open in case I didn't notice. I walked to the kitchen and stood at the sink, staring out the window at our backyard. The garden she used to spend weekends in was overgrown now. The swing I'd built her 2 summers ago creaked in the wind. Everything looked like a memory I hadn't agreed to make. When I turned around, she was standing at the kitchen entrance, yawning. "Morning," she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "Morning," I said. My voice came out flat. She padded over to the fridge and grabbed the orange juice. I watched her pour it, sip it, then set the glass down like she hadn't just shattered my world 3 weeks ago. "You okay?" she asked, noticing my stare. I nodded. "Yeah, just tired." She gave a small smile, then turned to grab a granola bar before heading back toward the bedroom. That was it. No guilt, no suspicion, just another day to her. But to me, everything had changed. I waited until she left for work to return to the laptop. I copied the entire weekend folder onto an external drive and stored it in the fireproof safe in the hallway closet. Not because I needed it to convince myself, it was for the legal part, the practical part, because what came next wasn't about emotions. It was about preparation. I spent the rest of the day in a daze. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't make small talk. Every time I tried to answer an email, I saw those videos again. Heard her laughter echoing in my ears like a ghost. I told my manager I wasn't feeling well and left early. At home, I poured myself a glass of scotch and sat on the back porch, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do now. Divorce? Counseling? Move out? None of it felt real. And yet, I knew this was realer than anything I'd ever faced. That night, Leslie came home late. She said traffic was bad, and her boss had kept her longer than usual. I said nothing. Just nodded and asked if she wanted dinner. She said no, already ate. I didn't even ask what. We sat in silence watching TV, her legs curled under her, scrolling through her phone like everything was normal, like nothing was burning under the surface. I didn't confront her, not yet, because something in me had shifted. The man who would have demanded answers, who would have shouted and cried and begged for the truth, he was gone. In his place was someone quieter, more calculating. I wasn't going to blow up my life in a single conversation. Not when I could prepare. Not when I could protect myself first. That night, I made a checklist in my notes app. Felt cold, even cruel, but I needed structure. I needed a plan. Legal consult. Research discreet divorce attorneys. Secure finances. Check joint accounts, remove auto access. Backup everything, emails, calendar, cloud data. Emotional support. Talk to someone, anyone. Confrontation. On my terms, not hers. It didn't feel like closure. Felt like war prep. And as I lay beside her that night, her breathing soft and even, I knew she had no idea the war had already begun. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just stared at the ceiling, waiting for morning. The morning after I made the checklist, everything looked the same. The sun rose at the same angle, the coffee brewed the same way, and Leslie moved around the kitchen in the same predictable rhythm she always did. But something had shifted, subtly, irreversibly. Not in the world. In me. I didn't feel anything. Not rage, not sadness. Just stillness. She was talking about something her coworker said in a meeting. Some joke she'd laughed at but clearly didn't find funny now that she was retelling it. I nodded at the right moments, murmured agreement when it felt necessary. But I wasn't really there. I was watching her lips move and wondering how she could smile so easily with all that she was hiding behind her teeth. When she asked what my plans were for the day, I answered automatically. Just work. Might stop by the hardware store later. That door hinge in the laundry room's been squeaking again. She nodded, biting into her toast. You're so handy, she said. Like a line from a play she'd forgotten she already performed 100 times. I went to work, and I did stop at the hardware store. But I also stopped by a law office a friend of mine had recommended months ago when he went through his own divorce. Back then, I never imagined I'd need it. I remember listening to his stories about betrayal and custody battles and thinking, that'll never be me. Now here I was, filling out an intake form under a fake name just to schedule a consultation discreetly. I told them I wanted to understand my options, nothing more. The receptionist gave me a sad smile that said she'd heard that line before. That night, Leslie brought home takeout, Thai again. It used to be a comfort food for us, something we shared on rainy nights or after long days. But now it just felt symbolic. The same food, the same boxes, the same chopsticks, but none of the warmth. She sat cross-legged on the couch, scrolling through her phone between bites. I watched her fingers move across the screen and wondered if she was texting him. The man from the videos. The man she thought I didn't know existed. Everything okay? She asked when she noticed me staring. Yeah, I said. Just tired. That became my new refrain. Over the next few days, I let the silence settle in. I didn't pick fights. I didn't bring up the videos or the lies or the distance between us that had grown too wide to ignore. I just stopped being available. When she touched my arm, I didn't lean into it. When she kissed my cheek, I didn't turn to meet her lips. When she asked if I wanted to watch something together, I told her I had work to finish, even if I didn't. And she noticed. At first, she seemed relieved. Like maybe she thought I was giving her space, or that I was too distracted to press her. But then she started asking more questions. Where was I going? Why was I quiet? Was something wrong? I told her no every time. And each time, it made her more uneasy. One night, as we were brushing our teeth side by side, she looked at me through the mirror and said, I feel like you're not really here lately. I rinsed my mouth and shrugged. Just tired. She stared at me for a beat longer, then turned off the faucet and walked away. A week passed, then another. And then, she dropped it casually over breakfast like it was nothing. I think I need a solo trip, just for a few days, to clear my head. I nodded. Where to? Not sure yet. Maybe the coast. Maybe Denver. Just somewhere. You should do that, I said, taking a sip of coffee. She blinked. You're okay with it? Yeah, I said, setting my mug down. I think space would be good for both of us. I saw something flicker across her face then. Surprise, maybe? Confusion. She expected resistance. Guilt had made her brace for a fight. But there was no fight left in me. Only clarity. That weekend she packed her bag. Not the small carry-on she used for Seattle. This time, she pulled out the big suitcase, the one with the scuffed wheels and the luggage tag from our honeymoon. She packed like someone who wasn't sure when she'd be back. I helped her carry it to the car. As she adjusted the rearview mirror, she hesitated. You gonna be okay? Of course, I said, offering a small smile. Take all the time you need. She nodded slowly. I'll text when I get there. I watched her drive away. No dramatic goodbyes. No promises. Just the quiet hum of the engine fading down the street. As soon as she was out of sight, I walked back into the house and started packing. Not for a trip, for a purge. I went room by room, boxing up everything that was hers. Clothes, shoes, framed photos, knickknacks she collected over the years, everything. I stacked them in the garage like luggage waiting for a cab. It took me all day, but I didn't stop. Not once. I opened drawers I hadn't touched in months and found old love notes, movie ticket stubs, receipts from places we used to love. I didn't linger. I didn't read them. I just put them in the boxes and kept going. In the bedroom, I stripped the bed and replaced the sheets. I opened the windows, let in fresh air. I unplugged her phone charger, took down her mirror, removed her hair ties from the nightstand drawer. By evening, it was done. The house felt empty but not sad. Not haunting. Just clean. I stood in the living room and looked around. For the first time in a long time, the space felt like mine again. The next day, I changed the locks. I called the lawyer and scheduled the full consultation. I drafted a letter, brief and direct, and slipped it into an envelope with her name on it. Then I placed it on top of the stack of boxes in the garage. Inside the envelope, a copy of the divorce petition, a key to the safe with the drive inside, and a short note. You know why. Don't come back without a lawyer. It wasn't vindictive. It was necessary. 3 days later, she returned. She pulled into the driveway just after noon. I watched from the upstairs window as she stepped out of the car, her sunglasses hiding most of her face, but her mouth was tight. Nervous. When she saw the boxes, she froze. She walked over, read the envelope, and opened it. She didn't cry. She didn't knock on the door. She sat on the edge of her car's trunk and stared at the papers for a long time. Then she got up, put the envelope back in the box, and drove away. She didn't take the boxes. Didn't take anything. Just left. I haven't seen her since. Leslie was gone. Again. Only this time she hadn't left for a weekend or a head-clearing trip. She'd been sent away. Not with yelling, not with threats, but with quiet finality. My message had been written in actions, not emotion. And I think that's what hit her hardest. She didn't come back that night. Or the next. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. The house was quiet. Not just quiet, peaceful. No more muffled phone calls behind closed doors. No more shifting blame or deflecting questions. No more pretending we were okay when we weren't even in the same story anymore. On the third morning, I got a text. I don't know what to say. I'm hurt. I feel blindsided. I thought we were okay. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time before deleting it. There was no point. The truth wasn't hidden anymore, it was documented. Filmed. Labeled and archived. There was no room for discussion. The story she told herself, the one where she was misunderstood or caught in a complicated moment, couldn't stand against the footage I had. That week, my attorney filed the divorce petition. I'd chosen someone known for being clinical, efficient, and impenetrable in court. I wasn't interested in revenge. I just wanted closure, clean and complete. Leslie was served 2 days later. I know because she tried to call me twice afterward. Left voicemails that swung between confused, tearful, and flat-out angry. I can't believe you'd go behind my back like this. I made a mistake, Austin, but so have you. You're acting like I never mattered to you. After everything. You blindsided me with lawyers? What happened to communication? You want war? Fine. She ended one of them with a long silence before whispering, you didn't even give me a chance to explain. But that was the thing, she'd had hundreds of chances. All those nights she lied about where she was. All those mornings she looked me in the eye and said, I love you. Every moment she could have come clean and didn't. Her final message came 2 days before our first hearing. You're going to regret doing it this way. I'll make sure of it. I played that one twice. Not because I was afraid, but because it confirmed exactly what my lawyer predicted. "She's going to try and spin this," he told me the day before court. Most people do, especially when they lose control. We had a digital folder ready. Screensh *TS, timestamps, location data, and of course the videos. We didn't include everything. Just enough to be undeniable. Enough to prevent false narratives from gaining traction. I walked into the courthouse with my head high. Leslie, on the other hand, showed up with a new attorney and a face full of makeup. More than I'd seen on her in months. She wore a navy pantsuit and carried herself like someone trying to play the role of the victim. But her eyes told a different story. They darted around the room constantly. Avoided mine. In her written response, she claimed emotional neglect. Accused me of being distant, cold, hyper-focused on work. She said she felt abandoned and alone. She didn't deny the affair, but she called it an emotional lapse. "She's testing how far she can bend the truth," my attorney whispered, flipping through her response packet. "But with what we have, she's only embarrassing herself." And that's exactly what happened. The hearing was brief, almost clinical. Her lawyer tried to humanize her choices, framing her as someone who'd made a mistake under pressure. Someone who deserved grace, not punishment. But the moment we submitted the video folder into evidence, the mood shifted. Her attorney's voice faltered when the judge skimmed the description. He didn't need to see the footage. The attached transcripts and metadata were enough. "Do you dispute this evidence?" the judge asked. Her lawyer paused, then said, "No, Your Honor." That was the beginning of the end. Her credibility crumbled in real time. Every accusation she had prepared, the claims about my emotional abandonment, the suggestion that we were mutually falling apart, was neutralized by the hard evidence of what she was actually doing during the time she said she was trying to fix things. The judge didn't offer sympathy. No lecture. No raised voice. Just a gavel drop. Petition granted. No spousal support. No property claim beyond what she brought in. We left the courtroom separately. She didn't look at me as she walked past, but I saw her jaw clench. Her hands were shaking slightly. Whatever last shred of control she thought she had, gone. I stepped into the sunlight and took my first breath as a single man. It didn't feel triumphant. Felt quiet, like something had finally stopped echoing inside me. But it wasn't over, not yet. The fallout began the next week. Leslie tried to do damage control. She posted vague messages online, thinly veiled insinuations about being gaslit and emotionally manipulated. She changed her profile picture to one of her smiling alone in a coffee shop, the caption reading, "Freedom comes when you finally see through the lies." It might have worked had someone not leaked the footage. It wasn't me. It wasn't my attorney. But someone, maybe a friend who had access to our shared drive, maybe someone Leslie trusted once, posted a clip online. Just 10 seconds. The elevator kiss. The same one that started it all. Within hours, it made its rounds on local social media. I didn't even know it had gone public until a client brought it up while I was fixing his transmission. "Hey man," he said cautiously. "Sorry to hear about everything. But seriously, the way you're handling it? Mad respect." I didn't know what to say, just nodded. Then it happened again. And again. A neighbor stopped by to ask how I was holding up. An old high school friend messaged me on Facebook, offering to grab a drink and catch up. A customer who'd ghosted me months ago suddenly came back to schedule service. Word spread. And oddly enough, my business started growing. Not overnight, but steadily. The sympathy turned into trust. People said things like, "You stayed classy," or "You didn't stoop to her level." Some just wanted to support a guy they thought got screwed over. I never asked for it. Never promoted myself as some kind of martyr. But people talk. And in a small town, they talk fast. Leslie, on the other hand, disappeared. She deleted her accounts a few days after the video surfaced. She quit her job 2 weeks later. I heard from someone that she moved in with a friend across town. But she didn't stay long. Then came the real twist. Her cousin Melanie, the same one Leslie used as cover for the Seattle trip, was arrested for fraud. Some kind of financial scheme tied to her employer. Charges were still pending, but the fallout reached Leslie fast. That circle she'd used for secrecy? Collapsing. Rumors began swirling. That Leslie had known. That she'd benefited from it. I didn't believe it at first. Still don't entirely. But the chaos followed her like smoke. Wherever she went, people whispered. She stopped trying to contact me after that. Stopped sending texts. Stopped pretending. And I let her go. I didn't hate her. I didn't wish her harm. But I didn't pity her either. She built her house of mirrors, and when it shattered, she ran from the glass. As for me, I kept moving forward. The documents came in the mail a week later. Finalized. Stamped. Complete. I sat at the kitchen table, the one we used to eat dinner at, and opened the envelope slowly. My hand didn't shake. My eyes didn't sting. I read every line with the calm of someone who'd already lived the hard part. I took the last page, folded it neatly, and slid it into a small folder marked Final Chapter. Then I stood up, walked outside, and watched the sky turn orange behind the trees. The war was over. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for the next battle. I never asked for anyone's sympathy. I never made a public statement or posted a vague quote aimed at Leslie. But somehow, the story made its way through town like wildfire. People pieced things together, some from that leaked video, others from whispers and mutual friends, and the narrative took on a life of its own. I became the guy who kept his head up, who didn't lash out, who handled betrayal like a gentleman even when the truth was brutal. It wasn't a title I asked for, but I wore it because it beat being the fool. The weirdest part? My business started booming. Clients who hadn't called me in months suddenly showed up, offering support and work. "You've got integrity," one said as I rotated his tires. "We need more of that around here." Even neighbors I barely spoke to began waving as they passed by or stopping to check in. At first, I thought they just felt sorry for me. But over time, I realized they respected how I didn't spiral. I didn't sling mud. I just moved on. Leslie, meanwhile, vanished. After deleting her social media, she left town without a word. Last I heard, she was staying with an old college friend 2 counties over. The story about her cousin Melanie's fraud case didn't help. It only confirmed what people suspected, that Leslie had surrounded herself with mess and eventually became part of it. I didn't celebrate her downfall.